Good morning. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Medea Cohan, and I am the creative director at, sorry, I just need to turn that sound off. Start again for the video. Morning, everyone. My name is Medea Cohan, and I'm the creative director at the Creative Entrepreneurs Club. I'm super excited to be doing a virtual studio visit in the age of COVID. This is how we get to see art, which is having just watched the video and not being able to see it as crisp and as clearly as we'd like to, slightly frustrating. However, it does mean people like Chris can come from Spain or wherever you are now, and people from all over the world can get stuck in a studio. So I think there's an upside and a downside, but it definitely means more people are getting to see people's practice and getting into spaces they wouldn't otherwise. So all in all, it's a good thing. I'm really pleased to be able to kind of poke around Serena's studio this morning, because over the last few months, she's been coming to our arts discussion group, now called Three Curators and a Bottle of Whiskey, more of our pub gathering. And, you know, we've kind of been through the roller coaster of the pandemic together, talking about our work and our frustrations and our successes, and really positively, it's been quite a good time for Serena. I mean, maybe not fun lifetime, but you know, for her work, it's been really positive and productive time. And I think we're quite privileged to be some of the first people to see what I keep calling, because I love it, the best work of her life. So you're welcome. I'm going to hand over to Serena, who's going to do a little bit of background about her practice and her work and her journey for people who aren't familiar with it. And then we've pre-recorded a bit of a studio tour that's about 10 minutes just to ensure the internet stays with us. So good morning, Serena, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Medea. That was a lovely introduction. And yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Serena Caulfield. I'm based in Wexford in Ireland. I paint mostly in oils. I'm interested at the moment. My work kind of varies a little bit, but kind of teetering somewhere between abstraction and figuration, and trying to work out how I can put it all together. But it's quite figurative at the moment. I'll give you a kind of a broad background. I grew up with horses. My parents had an equestrian centre, so horses have always been a big part of my life. And I had a very kind of idyllic childhood where I'd just be out on ponies all day, every day. Didn't have to come home until there was food on the table. And if we didn't come back for dinner, there was something wrong. Otherwise, there was total freedom and encouragement to explore and be curious and have fun and be outside and in the fresh air and all that stuff. So the horsey thing kind of, how would I put it? Well, my parents always said, don't go into horses, there's no money in it. So I chose to be an artist instead. Which is kind of probably a bit disappointing, but anyway. So yeah, I did a lot of competing with horses and everything too. And I actually had trials for the equitation school in the army when I was 16. I dropped out of school. I didn't tell my parents though. And I went and got a job and I bought a motorbike and all sorts of silly things. And anyway, so eventually I got I got caught out. And then shortly after, I had a really bad accident from a horse. So I was kind of like, I was laid up for a couple of years and had to do, yeah, art kept me sane, absolutely kept me sane. And then it was kind of a happy accident looking back, in that I got to go to the riffraff school up the road because all my friends were there, and I bribed my parents. I was like, yo, I've had such a shit time. Can I go to that school? Because all my friends were in the other one. But a nice coincidence was that the art teacher there actually knew my mum from when they were kids. So, and she saw my talent and she really nurtured me, because I hated school. I was really bad at it. I never wanted to be there. I was always bunking off and everything. But I just got stuck into being, you know, to painting and drawing, and she saw I had talent and looked after me. So then there was Gorey School of Art, which is where I did my degree. That had only just started up that year when I left school. So I went straight from school into Gorey, which is only an hour away from here. And it was really interesting because it was quite experimental. It was really small. There were 10 of us in the entire art school because I was in the first year of it. We had hardly any facilities. There was like a wood workshop, and we used to do all our welding and stuff outside, like literally outside this concrete prefab thing, which was the art school. And I had some great tutors there. Mairead Hoka was my main painting tutor. And there was the Geneve Figgis actually was in my class as well. So we came through art school together. But at some point I nearly dropped out because I was always told, stop painting fucking horses and, you know, stuff like that. So I nearly dropped out, and there was a random visit. We now live in a place called Kilmore. My mum at the time had a B&B. So we had a very, very unusual booking came in for a man called Angus Fairhurst. So Angus came to stay when I was in third year. I was just about to drop out, and he said, look, I want to see your work. I want to go through it with you. And he just gave me all the encouragement in the world. So he kind of became a mentor for, well, a couple of years. And then unfortunately he took his own life in, I think it was 2005. But he was like one of my main kind of influences, just from the encouragement. And I'd seen his work in various places, museums, galleries, all over the place. So I couldn't believe that this guy had actually turned up on my doorstep, and was so, he was just amazing. But it turned out as well that his mum knew my aunt really well. So, and they'd known each other forever and ever, their entire lives. And I didn't realize that there was a link there at all. Like, to my aunt, Angus Fairhurst was just, oh, that's Sally's son, and he paints, I think. You know, there was no kind of thing of who he was or anything like that. Anyway, I was kind of blown away. So then I finished in Gorey, and the art school in Wexford was just opening up. So I did my final year. It was like an ordinary degree in Gorey and then an honours degree in Wexford. So I did that, and I was lucky. I got a travel and training award from Wexford County Council to do my master's. So I went to Norwich to do my master's. And apparently I was only 23 as well, so I was so young. Looking back at it was kind of ridiculous. But having said that, I was the first full-timer to get a distinction in my master's. And my master's project was a huge, big photographic installation. I went in a painter and I came out not knowing who the fuck I was or what the hell was going on, but it was really, really, really good, good experience, and very studio based. And you know, I did lots of stuff. Like, one of the projects I was working on, I was in the Natural History Museum there, and I was painting and drawing all the shabby old taxidermied animals that were kind of hidden away from view, and they were absolutely disgusting, crusty, but so interesting. And I couldn't really figure out why I kept going back to this tatty old stuff. But I made some reasonably okay paintings and things when I was there. But as I say, it kind of went, it went into, photographic installation. So yeah, I came out of Norwich. I stayed on there for a bit, and after I'd finished my master's, and then my dad wasn't well, so I came home to Wexford, and the plan was that I'd stay back for, you know, a summer and do something to try and make a few quid and stay around while my dad wasn't well. But I ended up opening a gallery, and it was called the Sweet Shop Gallery, and the idea was that it would be like old-fashioned sweets and contemporary art, and it would make it really accessible to lots of different people that, you know, they could be just down from Dublin for the weekend. It was a little seaside town called Rosslare. So I actually got a backer for financial backing from a banker in London to help me fund the startup and everything. And I ended up staying there nearly 4 years. And it was supposed to be pop up, slapdash, hang a few paintings on the wall, welcome some people in, tell them about the art. It was a lot of emerging artists, and then a little bit of my own work and stuff as well. But then my own work got completely shoved to one side. So I became the sweet shop girl. So the kids would come in to buy sweets, and then they would take their paintings from art class to show me, and then they'd follow me down the beach with my dog, and then I was like the Pied Piper of Rosslare with children and sweets and art and stuff. And anyway, I had to abandon ship on that one. That was just like, it was brilliant looking back on it, but I think it was probably payback karma for all the years that I was a little shit, and I got it all back to me. So that was fine. So yeah, it's been a long slog for coming out of that and being out of the loop. And because I didn't go to art school in Dublin, I didn't really know, I didn't know all the artists. I didn't know all the art world people. And it's very small. It's very kind of small and a bit cliquey probably. But then that was one of the reasons why I chose to do my master's somewhere not London, because I didn't want the pretentiousness of whatever school I was in. I wasn't interested in all that. I just wanted to make work. So yeah, it's been tough enough to kind of get up and running again, but I've been really, really focused on my work now for a few years, looking at historical paintings a lot recently. It's something that I've kind of gone in and out of over the years, and reimagining them, kind of combing different elements in figuring out what it is that I want to paint and how to paint it, but also as a way of exploring the world in a broader sense. So yeah, the focus of my work at the moment it's quite varied. During the lockdown, I asked my mum about a painting that I remember hanging in our house when I was a kid, and it was a Bruegel painting. And I had this memory of a huge big painting over the fireplace. We lived in a bungalow, so it was modest, but it was the last place that you'd expect to see a Bruegel painting hanging. And it was sold when I was about 3, I think. So, I was really young, but that painting has afforded me and our family the life that we have. Everything is based on that Bruegel painting. So recent work, when I asked her about it, she said, no, Serena, it wasn't huge. It was tiny, and it was, like 24 centimeters by something. Really, really small painting. But what interested me was that I had remembered it as something that was huge. And obviously, as a child, you think, well, how the hell did they fit the animals in the boats if it was a tiny painting? So I'm kind of playing with these ideas of how memories can get morphed into something else and skewed over time. I'm using references like obviously Bruegel paintings, but lots of different paintings from art history and classical artworks, and then children's books. Like I found lots of my books that I had as a child, how to draw animals, how to paint animals, stuff like that. You know, that's kind of coming into it as well, looking back at that. And then where we live now, there's it was completely derelict when my parents bought it when it's 24 years ago now. And there's kind of different mythologies based around the house here. So for example, there's a story about a black dog. There's one of a white horse who gallops around and then disappears. And then there's one of a white hare as well, which takes a particular route, jumps onto the front windowsill, disappears into thin air, you know. So I think I was about 11 when we moved here, and all these stories were kind of, you know, I was like, holy shit, you know, this house is creepy, and there's no roof and there's no windows. And basically it was so bad that when we first arrived here, I cried. I was like, Mom, we can't move there. It's a pile of stones. And myself and my sister actually cried the first day we pulled in here. So, you know, there's kind of all these local mythologies, childhood memories, that Bruegel painting, lots of things like that kind of creeping into it at the moment, that I'm just trying to pull it all together. And then thinking about how to merge the figuration and the abstraction through oil paint and history, and keep it contemporary. And there's an awful lot going on. So that's kind of, oh yeah, hold on, I have a list of my recent accomplishments.
Yes, thank you. I have to extract those. That's like blood from a stone with Serena. Go on then.
So this year I've been very lucky. I got a micro grant from the RHA, which is the Royal Hibernian Academy, for anyone who doesn't know, in Dublin. And I got an ArtLinks bursary, which is a combination of 5 county councils in the region. So that was really good, very happy about that. And then most recently I got a professional development award from the Arts Council. So that is
and some exhibitions.
Oh yeah. So I have work in well, no, I haven't got that many exhibitions this year. 3 group shows. So the one now is Courthouse Gallery in Clare in Ennistimon. So I have one piece in that, which is actually in my video in my studio visit. I had to do the video before I sent the work up. Otherwise, you know, the whole hang would be just shit without that painting. So that one's up in Clare. And then I have a group show called Pandemic in Dublin at the moment with a couple of artists, with 4 other artists. They invited me kindly for a pop-up exhibition. And I won't even talk about the one previous to that because it was an absolute shit show. So that's, oh yeah, and I have a couple of exhibitions coming up. One in Ballina Arts Centre at some point in the next million years. I don't know when it might happen, but it was scheduled for September next year, but it's been postponed, so I don't know when it's going to happen. And then one hopefully for Wexford Arts Centre as well, and that'll be the following year with any luck. So that is pretty much it. I think I've told you enough about my life.
Lots to look forward to, though, for people who want to see your work, and lots for you to work toward, which is really positive at a time when there feels like there's endless nothingness and unknown. So I think it's great to have things coming.
Yeah.
I wrote furiously a million notes. That was really interesting, and I'm gonna have lots of questions after the video. But should we show everyone what we're talking about? I'm
Sure.
gonna try to not screw this up when I share the video. I appreciate your patience in advance, but here we go. I'm gonna share my screen and I'll show you the video, and then after we'll regroup here. If you have any questions pop into your mind when you're watching it, type them in the box and we'll come through them when we get back. I say that because otherwise we sit here awkwardly looking at each other while we wait for you to write things. And then I have to keep asking questions and you have to listen to me instead of yourselves. So if while you're watching, you're inspired, pop them in there and then there's no pause and we don't have to look at each other awkwardly. Cool. Okay, here we go. Alrighty. Oh, you know what I need to do? Shut myself up first.
Painting quite a few monkeys.
And there we go.
So I'm going to give you a little walk around now, a little tour. There are a few paintings in here in various states of undress or completion, if you like. This is quite a small studio, so I'm kind of working it to the best of my ability. I've been painting quite a few monkeys lately. So this triptych is quite recent, and I think it works quite well. I hadn't really planned for this to happen, in that it became a sort of a commentary on maybe the idea of being an artist, and that, you know, we could probably be like monkeys, trained animals. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. So there's a sculpting monkey. And you'll notice there are ravens in a few of my paintings as well. We have a pair of ravens that nest in a tree out the front of the house. And I never get bored watching them. Just watching their dynamics, so interesting. This one was after a painting by Landseer, and it was of a monkey looking at its own reflection. But I decided to leave that out, so it's just a reflection of a monkey with a painty face. Kind of interested in trying to pull the abstraction and the figuration together as well. I just love paint. I love mark making. I love trying to explore new possibilities with paint and colour. I've always been quite a colourful person. You'll notice in the background of this that there's a castle and a tree, and that is actually more or less the view as I look out the kitchen window. So, you know, I'm trying to introduce elements that are familiar to me, so that they're more personal, I think. And I've left things out from, you know, using the source images as originals. Also, I use really bad quality source material a lot of the time. Bad reproductions, I mean, not material itself. They're generally bad, pixelated, small. Sometimes I just work off the screen of my phone, which is quite interesting because I think it allows for ambiguity, it allows for invention, and makes it a little bit more interesting when I want to insert something in there that isn't there, or that I can't see the image properly, that I'm not trying too hard to make it as it is in the photo that I'm working from. So this is another recent piece, and it's after Franz Snyder's So I mentioned earlier about the Bruegel painting that I remember as a child, and my great grandfather was a big art collector. He had an amazing collection. So it's dissipated over the years. We have a few really manky, old, dirty, dark paintings that, aren't worth a whole lot or anything like that. But he had lots of amazing work that he collected over his lifetime. And my mum would have grown up with a lot of these. So there's a kind of a longing as well, I think, of a collection that's lost. And for me to look at the artists that were in that collection is just really fascinating, because there's, I'm one step removed already, and it probably allows a lot more freedom as well in deciding what it is that I want to paint and how to paint it. So that's another one. Here is Two Monkeys. It is quite a famous painting by Bruegel as well, used as a source image. But I've made them so that they're possibly playing with paint or eating paint, or it's nearly like they're playing a game, playing a little game of chess or moving bits around. So I think there's quite a lot of metaphors in there too. But I do keep painting a lot of monkeys lately. This is not finished, therefore I will not show you any more of it. So this is after a Bruegel painting as well. It was one of the first ones I did, actually. And I think it works quite well. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'd also, I think I mentioned earlier that I grew up with horses and stuff, so horses have always been a big part of my life. Even when I was a child, if I was supposed to be mucking out ponies or doing any jobs around the yard or anything like that, I was often found skiving off in a stable drawing a pony rather than doing the hard work, which is fair enough, I think. And again, I've got the tree from the front of our house and the castle in the background. This is one of the Noah's Ark scenes by Bruegel too. So this one is about to be loaded up and sent to the Courthouse Gallery in Clare for a show, and it's called The Allegory of Vanity. I think the original painting was like monkeys feasting, and there was a lot of commotion, and this was painted only a few weeks ago as well, when all the presidential elections were happening, and the world is pretty fucking chaotic at the moment. And I kind of wanted to think about my own life in relation to everything, really. I think that's what we do anyway as artists, isn't it? So again, we have the monkeys feasting on paint. It could be a palette, it could be, it's like they're fighting over paint. Also thinking about artists and how we operate as artists. It's quite it's an interesting world. We often make artwork with other artists in mind, whether we're referencing them or looking for their validation or approval from online, or get really excited if someone who you admire or respect as an artist likes your work. There's all sorts of things going on there, I think. But so in this particular painting, I've made it so that my house is in the background. It's all calm and quiet, and it has, my ravens and my peaceful, quiet place, and then all this chaos in a separate room. I suppose it could even be that, you kind of compartmentalize the outside world, maybe as a coping mechanism sometimes, but also that we work quite, in solitary quietness a lot of the time, and that solitude is something that we take for granted on an everyday basis, I think. But also, we're not there, but it can't exist in a vacuum or emptiness or without viewers or without other artists or without any of those things, really. It takes a whole world for it to work, and that interests me. So I will leave it at that. I've gone over and above the amount of time that I wanted to annoy you with this for. So hope you have enjoyed that and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. So I appreciate people popping questions in there. You swear too much for TV. I disagree. I mean, she says having borderline Tourette's, so, I'm not maybe the benchmark. Brilliant, cool. That I mean, I loved it. I watched it the other day, and it was such a great insight into the work and kind of understanding it. I think you speak beautifully about your work, and I'm highly critical of how artists talk about their work because I think they usually spew gobbledygook and it's like buzzwords and art school bullshit. I think you help already beautiful paintings evoke even more layers, and that makes them richer and more exciting. So that's a rare skill, and you can add it to your list of accomplishments.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Well, thank you for sharing a view into your studio. I've got lots of questions, but do you just want to speak briefly about kind of what's happened since with the pandemic, leaving London, coming home, and maybe the effect that that's had? Because it's very clear that it's your sort of safe, calm place, and I think that's it features in the work, and it seems to be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of gravitate home again. Always, I can be away for a while. I travel a lot. I only appreciate the travel because I can come home again, and vice versa. I appreciate home because I tend to travel. So, yeah, I mean, I came back in March, and it was kind of in a panic. So I packed up as much stuff as I could from my flat in London. Still have half my crap there. But anyway, that's another day's work. Came back, didn't have very much. I had no money. I was so broke. And I had hardly any materials. So I started to deconstruct. I haven't showed any of that work on here, but if anyone would like to see, I have a whole section dedicated to it on my website, serenacaulfield.com, and just drop that in there. Yeah, so I started to literally deconstruct older work, and I think I'd started doing the Terps program and Terps painting correspondence course, and my mentor on there was a bit, I don't know, she just turned everything upside down in terms of what I thought I was doing. And one of the comments she said was, well, you're quite okay in figuration, but you're really bad at abstraction. I was like, okay. So anyway, I decided to prove her wrong. And I turned all my figurative, not all of them, some of my figurative paintings that may or may not have worked, perfectly well, turn them into abstract pieces by literally carving into the surface, pulling the paint off, seeing, how which parts of the composition worked, which didn't. but it kind of turned into these linear abstractions, which I thought, they worked quite well. But also thinking about scarring and about because the accident I had that I mentioned earlier, I have quite a few scars from that, and all these things. Really looking back at maybe family history, started doing some family genealogy stuff. Then thinking about how maybe trauma could be passed down through the DNA, all these different things feeding into it. So yeah, the result was some quite dilapidated paintings that, visually they work quite well. I'm not sure they were totally resolved in terms of ideas, but because there was too much going on. But that's how I am anyway. I always have too much going on, and too many things feeding into it. I think just as a naturally curious person, I tend to overdo it sometimes. But yeah, it's been really, really, really productive time. I was lucky in that I made quite a few sales. All the money that I made from sales, I put into my studio, improving like lighting, storage. I've just invested in some museum quality canvases, Old Holland paint. Right, one of the tubes is 178 euros for one tube of paint. So, but I've managed to do all of this stuff since the beginning of lockdown, and I wouldn't have done it if I was still in London. I'd be working like a dog, getting paid hardly anything, waitressing for old toffs at private parties and serving them champagne and canapes and trying to pretend that I didn't think I was at the party. So that's kind of, that's what I was doing. And I was catering at gigs and festivals and big, huge events, and just working tirelessly didn't have time to paint when I was there. So, if lockdown hadn't happened, I think I was too stubborn to come home, just in that I was like, no, I am going to make it in London. But it was just stupid really from the beginning. It was a great experience, but I didn't, I wouldn't want to be in London trying to survive as an artist. So there's been lots of, really positive things have come out of being back for COVID. I mean, I'm probably going to be here for quite some time. Yeah, in the prime of my life, and stuck at home with my mum, my sister.
But I think, if it's your happy place, then, it could be much worse. It could be a traumatic place to return to. So,
Yeah.
and it's had a positive effect on the work. So, and I think also having space and light and different energy, you some of the earlier works when you were in London were quite small because you had space restrictions and things like that. So, I think all in all, it's been positive for the work and your sanity.
Absolutely.
Aoife wants to know if you're planning on going back, and if so, how do you think that will impact your work?
No.
I feel the same way. I'm never going back. I don't even want to visit.
No. Yeah, I mean, I really want to visit, and but no, I can't see myself living, working there. I think financially I worked it out. I'd be better off going back every week on a Ryanair flight and staying somewhere for a night or two than living there. So no. But I really miss it. I really miss seeing exhibitions and going to galleries, museums. And when I was there, I wasn't too far away from the V&A, so I just walk up there whenever I felt like it, and that was amazing. And going to all the private views and meeting people, and like the very first night I was in London, I met Anish Kapoor at a private view, and that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's happening there right now either. So you're
No.
probably not missing anything. I mean, I think, Eamon and I have both left London, had great careers there curating, and spent most of our time drunk in
Yeah.
private views.
Yeah.
And it was, we were at the opening of a bottle, and it was brilliant. It was a brilliant time in our lives, and I really, really missed that. But I'm quite sure it's not happening, so we're not missing out too much.
No.
But yeah, I do think that's what London's there for. I mean, that's certainly what brought me there from America and kept me there for a good long while, and I understand that of that. Eamon, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's kind of an observation and a question, really. Serena, thank you for that. Was lovely and really good to see the studio. And it's obviously weird because none of us can get the studios, none of us can experience that, and the smell of fresh paint and all that kind of stuff is really difficult. So I thought your film was really lovely. I'm really honest. Really, as Medea said, down to earth. There's no bullshit. You just tell it as it is. And that's why you should be the BBC art correspondent, in my opinion. Anyways, but I think that what you've sort of demonstrated there is something that Medea and I've been banging on about for years and years. For anyone who's listened to us, is that you don't have to be in a metropolis to make great art and to have a successful career. And I think that's one of the things that's been really great about this year, leaving aside the mountains of shit that there is. I think the fact that we've all returned to home in some respect, whether that's work from home, going back to live with parents, whatever it may be. And those of us, I hate that word pivot, but those of us who've made that work have sort of demonstrated that the sort of capitalist model of all us rushing into city centre to work in these offices and to do things and then return back home at night is broken. I think that for artists, there's always been this thing like, if you live in Ireland, you go to Dublin. If you live in UK, you go to London. If you live anywhere else, you go to New York, Paris, Berlin. And that sort of drive to city centres is not sustainable anymore. And so I think it's a bit like what Aoife was saying is, given all the things we've come through this year, do you see your long-term position remaining in Wexford and sort of building your career out from there? And if so, what do you think are some of the challenges around that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as Medea said, it's my happy place. I'm kind of, it's not that well, it is comfortable because I'm, it's warm and I have food in my belly and roof over my head and all the rest of it. And living beside the sea and all that stuff. But I think the world is so much smaller now because of COVID and because of technology and because of all those things that we would have seen as a hindrance before. They're not. I don't think it's. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think the world is actually quite reachable. Hold on, my laptop's about to die. Okay, grand. The other thing is that I'm part of Peripheries Meet, and that is basically, there's 8 of us from Wexford that are working with regular kind of meetups online as well. But one of the things that we've been talking about is trying to make that art world outside of cities, and that you can have different communities of artists, and it is like a community. It's like, if you were into flower arranging, for example, you have that network no matter where you're from, that it's still accessible. So I think maybe it's like what St. Ives is, but it's not a geographical thing, if that makes sense.
It really does. And I think that, one of the things I'm teaching students this year, and one of the things that I'm saying to students, third years, is, the reality is now that collaboration is key. And I think that thing about, historically, you come out of art school, you went to a studio with other artists and you did whatever it may be, but, studio space is disappearing rapidly in Ireland and in the UK and elsewhere, I'm sure. So I think that those collaborations are really, really important. And I think that's what's been great what Medea has done this year in terms of this CEC thing, in terms of collaborating and getting people to talk and share. And this is networking, and artists hate the word networking, but this is what you're doing now.
Yeah.
I think that to build a successful career now is going to involve that collaboration and doing those things that are online, virtual, and this idea of the artist working away in their garret by themselves, making their work and not having any kind of output is really important. And also, as Medina and I have been saying for years, the sort of traditional commercial gallery model is kind of broken and gone. So I think the artists have been much more, I use Medina's word here, entrepreneurial in terms of what they do, in terms of thinking about themselves as a creative business. And I think that's what you've done this year, is you've sort of, okay, you had to go back home for pandemic reason, but rather than just sit in the corner and cry about it and say this shit, I'm never going to make a career, you come out of it and okay, you did the deconstruction work to sort of work out what the hell am I doing, but you enable that as a jumping point to say, okay, this is what I want to do. And now it's proven dividends. I know you sold a huge amount of work, and I know you've got like 3 group shows at the minute. You got the group show in Wexford hopefully next year, you've got Ballina, you've got Wexford, and lots of other interesting work. So it proves that your entrepreneurial flair, if I can use that phrase, is really evident. So it's as much about making great work as it is about all those other things that artists have to do now. And I think you really demonstrate that really well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's we have to see ourselves as being a business, and I know that's the other side of it that's kind of frowned upon by the art world, that you can't be seen to trying to flog your
It's
work.
only frowned upon by academics who don't show make it work anymore. There's no clue, but real artists understand the importance of selling work. And you don't have a commercial gallery in the White Cube or Curlin in Dublin and B. You have to do it yourself, and that's being a business. And that's where I get frustrated with academics and old male artists who sort of shine away from this thing. Say, well, fuck off, will you? Go and do your little hovel wherever you are, and let the rest of us get on with it.
Well, I'm just not sure how they think people feed themselves. Like, we can't all have jobs as academics and get a pension, mate. So, I mean, this is a trigger for me because it's such a wind up. And I think there's such a stigma around selling and selling out, and they're not the same thing. And I think, as long as you're doing what you intended to do without compromise, then there is no selling out. There's only selling and feeding yourself through your practice, which is an important part of being able to sustain that practice.
Yeah.
And that's how I view that. I mean, it's about sustainability. It's not about rolling around in beds full of cash. No one's doing that. That's a really small percentage of the population.
That would be nice, though.
Oh, tell me about it. I think to your point, Eamon, it's really, I'm working from the States now. It just goes to show that you can do these things anywhere in the world. And I really hope what that means is it's not location based. Success is not about where you are, but how good you are. And that there is a bit of a democratization of the art world in that there aren't galleries deciding who's the best and everyone else is just kind of waiting in the wings. We're all kind of able to show our work, and the good stuff rises to the top. And it doesn't matter if you're in a wee village in the middle of nowhere or you're in London where everything is seen. I think that levels the playing field a bit, and it really lets good artists come to the fore. And there's so much shit in London. I mean, one of the reasons I left is because I was just getting angry all the time about having to go to degree shows or having to go to freeze or whatever, and just seeing piles of shite that people were like falling over themselves for. It's just mind-blowing. So I think it's a good thing. I think that the current climate, and I agree, I think things like this and things like discussion groups and the group you've got in Wexford, those moments are important, because otherwise we can feel isolated, alone, and we're not getting that influence and that shared energy. And I think that's so important when we are somewhat isolated, to share energy and to talk and to be excited by someone else's work, or to find ways of working together to expand on what you're doing. So, I mean, it was interesting listening to you talk about your master's degree, pulling everything apart, and then, this mentor kind of fucking with your flow. And, you've had a couple of restarts. And I don't think that's uncommon in a journey, especially a journey where you keep investing in your development. Like, you are quite proactive with trying things and taking courses and taking input on, and that can set you back, and it can pull things apart, and it's hard to stay the course. And I think it's really wonderful that you've kept finding your way back to these core things. There's a wonderful collection of serendipitous moments in your life that keep coming through, no matter what you do, no matter the medium or the size or the stage of the journey. And that's who you really are. And then that's really beautiful to see kind of come together now.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the serendipity is just ridiculous when I look back on all the things that have happened that wouldn't, you know, that have just kept me back on that path. For example, right, I'll give you one last one. I had a horrible ex-boyfriend a couple of years ago. So I went to Colombia. I literally booked it 2 days before, went to Colombia, went on a 5-day hike to the Lost City. And at the base camp, I met this girl, English girl, called Alex, and we kind of instantly just bonded, right? So we decided we'd stick together because both of us were traveling by ourselves. And at some point over the course of, you know, the 5 days, but about 2 days in, I said, oh, do you know what? I'd love to live in London for a bit. And she said, well, I'm away traveling until September. Why don't you move into my flat? So that's where I've been living. That's where I've been living for the last whatever. So, and I still have a bunch of my stuff in her place. So, you know, it is a serendipity. All of it kind of works out in whatever way. And there's been lots of other little coincidences along the way, but it always kind of pulls me back to where I need to be.
Well, lucky you. I mean, when you read autobiographies of famous people like Tracy Thorn from Everything But the Girl, it's the same kind of thing. It's just like, well, this happened and then this happened and this happened, and I don't know how I got here. You know, like just a bunch of stuff kind of moved me here, and it sounds so accidental when you know there's tons of hard work in it. But you know that the things that stay with you are not those hard times. It's the, you know, meeting with Angus, it's the Bruegel, it's the accident off the horse, it's, you know, the investor in the candy shop, it's the house having the mythology, it's all these moments that kind of, you know, shape who you are and where you're going. And I think that's the beautiful part of your story, that you've held on to those and that they've manifested the way that they have.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, anyone, I'm conscious that we have a few minutes left. Anyone other than Eamon and I want to hear the sound of their own voices or ask a meaningful, deep question? Or have we covered it all? Chris, were you impressed with the €170 tube of paint? I know you're very obsessed with. Yes. Christine gets into mixing her own paint. She's into all manner of paint related work. And also, you know, Chris swings between figurative and abstract as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed, Serena. It was awesome to see that, and the fact of this figurative abstract. I actually have a similar struggle, so it's so interesting listening to your struggle, because don't you really think that every painting is abstract? There's no such. I mean, every painting is abstract, and you can see something figurative even in the most abstract work anyway.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, people coming to view an abstract piece will always find a face or find something that they can make familiar to them. And the figurative stuff, I mean, the more kind of traditionally figurative, it's always going to be abstract because it's not reality. You know, there's so many things kind of floating in and out between, kind of like some kind of half-life. But yeah, yeah.
But do you think that it's almost as though, because figuration is a fashion thing. Figuration has been not very trendy. I hate that word, for a while, and now it's okay to be a figurative painter. But do you think there's just still some kind of hierarchy, or not a hierarchy, but there's just something that's not spoken about in some way, and I can't put my finger on it.
I think I call it the art school hangover, because like if you've been through art school, I know personally I was always told, don't paint animals, don't paint that, don't paint this. And you know, by the end of it, I really felt like shouting at them and saying I'll paint what I fucking like, but I didn't. I did some photographic installation, you know, it was like, so I think it's taken me the guts of 10 years to get that, you know, to come back to this. Like, I don't think they're childlike as such, but trying to be childlike in how I approach painting animals, for example, in, how do you put it? Yeah, just trying to not care. But then you care deeply about what you're painting, because why else would you do it?
It's a lifelong struggle, that
Yeah.
striking a balance between not giving a fuck about societal bullshit and listening to your voice, and also caring a lot about, you know, what you're hearing inside. You know, it's a hard contradiction to turn off one and keep the other one alight.
Yeah.
And also, you know, Eamon and I worked at a university for many, many years, and it's there's so much good that happens there, but you know, those offhand remarks that bitter academics make can be so damaging to aspiring creatives who are putting their heart out there, and you know, everything they're making is like their babies, and you make some offhand remark and you just shut it down. And you know, I really have, I take umbrage with this shit. I think academics have to be so much more careful about how they conduct themselves, saying you can't do this, you shouldn't do that, this isn't how you do that. I mean, art is a fully subjective practice, and I don't know how anyone has the audacity to make statements, you know, that really impact people's life and shape their time thereafter, and damage their confidence. I mean, that's what it is. It's the confidence to let go of all that shit they told you can and can't do. And, you know, from failed artists who've become academics. So who the fuck are they? I mean, it's mind-boggling.
They're people with no feelings, is what
Well,
they are.
they're people with a paycheck. They're people with no risk. They're people who don't have to believe in their practice anymore, is what they are. And it's troubling that they are, you know, influencing many, many lives.
I think as well that, you know, what you're alluding to, Serena, and what Medea sort of said there is the same thing in a sense, is that, you know, we're all conditioned, we go through art school, and having been the artist who got slagged off by the shit artist. Now, they were right, so I have no problem with that. I was a crap artist. But we've seen, you know, I've seen artists over the year, like there's an artist Medea and I worked with 10 years ago, 15 years ago, who was an amazing painter, but got a third because he wasn't a good student. But sold out his degree, she got a commercial gallery out of it. So it's kind of like, what do you mean by success? But I think the thing I'm getting to is that all artists, you know, regardless of your art form, make the work for yourself. Forget about everyone else. So you go back to it to make animals and do portraits and do landscapes. You're making that work for yourself, and you're making then your best work, rather than trying to sort of second guess, you know, tutors or the art world or what people want. Is make the work you want to make, and then let everyone else enjoy and experience and celebrate. I think that's really, really critical.
Yeah.
I think that applies to any medium. I mean, it's the problem musicians struggle with when they're making their second album, their first album sold well. It's like, how do I want to make this other stuff now? How do I do that without losing my audience? You know, I think a true practitioner, you can't even weigh that stuff into the equation. You know, you have to be doing, and that means sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you're always winning if you're doing what you intended to do and that feels good for you, I guess. That might not work out commercially, but them's the breaks. Anyway, I'm just conscious other people have other things to do. It's the middle of the day somewhere, although the light is just coming up here. Serena, thank you. I'm sorry that Eamon and I like the sound of our voice so much, but the sound of yours is much better, and it was totally enjoyable and really enlightening, and I can't wait to share it on the CEC website with the rest of our community. But thank you everybody here for listening so intently, and Serena, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who turned up. And I've actually really enjoyed that. I thought I was going to shit my pants earlier, but I didn't. That's good.
You know, it's an important thing to talk about your work regularly and remind yourself what the fuck you're doing and why, and you know, let other people in on it. It's a really great story. It's wonderful to hear it. So,
well, thank you very, very much.
Again. A pleasure. Thanks, everybody. It's always one of these things where I have to abruptly kick you out because there's no other way to end these. So come check us out at CEC. There's loads of other things. In the new year, we're going to be doing a studio visit every month. If you're interested in hosting one, just get in touch with me. We've got a few things up on the website for the first quarter of next year. There's more going up. Some really interesting makers of all different disciplines coming. And yeah, there's big change ahead for CEC. We're kind of moving things forward. By March 31st, there will be no more admittance into the free membership, and everyone who's here will have it for life. So if you know anybody who should join and hasn't yet, the time is in the next 3 months, because after that, our beta free version is over. So invite everyone you know. And I will see you next year, or maybe tomorrow at our Festivus for the Rest of Us goofy party. I'll be wearing an absolute shit show of an outfit, so something to look forward to for anybody who's going to be there. Anyway, take good care. Have a lovely holiday if I don't see you, and I hope to see you all next year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Anne.